really don't see the focus on native forage production that we should, we can promote some of these native forage plants without all the cost and negatives that come from things like supplemental feeding and food plots. And several of these species that I have in my hand here have weed in the name, actually. I'm Mark Turner, Wildlife Extension Specialist at OSU, and today we're going to be talking about native deer forage plants and the influence that they can have on the size of deer on your property. Oftentimes when folks think about feeding deer, they're thinking about either food plots or supplemental feeders, and oftentimes just focusing on forage availability in the fall. And that's a huge mistake, because right now in the middle of summer, this is the time of year whenever bucks are growing antlers, does are needing to produce milk for their fawns, and those are very nutritionally stressful processes that if we're not providing for them, they're going to suffer, and we're going to see smaller deer on our property. And so oftentimes, we really don't see the focus on native forage production that we should. And there's also a misperception about the types of plants that deer are eating this time of year. Now certainly, deer will eat a variety of plant species. They'll eat some woody plants during the summertime. They eat a little bit of grass, but not hardly any grass at all. But really the types of plants that we should focus on producing if we're trying to grow larger deer are forbs. And another term for forbs are weeds. And several of these species that I have in my hand here have weed in the name, actually. Species like pokeweed. Pokeweed's got excellent crude protein, excellent phosphorus levels. It's highly selected by deer. It's also a good fruit producing plant and seed producing plant for several bird species. We can also think about ragweed. Both common and western, as well as even giant ragweed, provide excellent nutrition for deer that are going to meet or exceed their maximum nutritional requirements. And again, it's highly selected. Certainly, I know that a lot of folks hate on this plant because of allergies, and I certainly understand that. But if you walk around and look at deer use of ragweed, oftentimes you'll see that it's getting grazed heavily, and that's a sign that, hey, they're using this plant, and I probably should be doing things to promote it. Desmodium, or Beggar's lice, is another species that we commonly would think about promoting for deer forage. Again, it's highly selected by deer, provides excellent nutrition. And even species like horseweed or mare's tail. Now, certainly there's some issues with glyphosate resistance with horseweed, and I'm certainly aware of that, but it's one that if it's growing in old fields or pastures, or even in open woods like what's behind me, that I'm managing for deer forage production, I'm not worried about it. This plant over time has certainly produced some of the highest levels of phosphorus consistently that I've seen in plants that I've sampled, and it's highly selected by deer. Walk around, see what deer are selecting on your property, but by doing things like burning, opening the canopy and disking, and also killing non-native grasses in fields, we can promote some of these native forage plants without all the cost and negatives that come from things like supplemental feeding, and certainly all the cost that comes from food plots. These plants are drought resistant, and so think about ways that you can promote more of these forages. After sampling deer forages across 25 properties over several years, I found that there was a strong linkage between the types of plants that were growing there, specifically did they have many forbs, and were those forbs available in good abundance, and the size of deer. And so properties that were producing the largest antlered deer and the largest bodied deer were those that had greater coverage of vegetation types that were relatively open, managed with fire, that would be producing more forbs. Because again, if your woods are closed canopy and your fields are just dominated by grass, you're almost certainly not going to be meeting those nutritional requirements for deer. So think about forage availability in the summertime. There's a lot of good practices that you can do to improve forage in the summertime. And for some of those resources and fact sheets, check out some of the information in the description.